We want to now look at the ISIN model with expectations. The model is similar to our ISIN model as we had before, where we will still have the same LM curve, but now we have the expectation augmented IS curve. So now let's see how the IS curve changes. We know from chapter 6, the IS curve is given to us as, we know that IS curve represents goods market equilibrium. So the equation of the IS curve is y is equal to c plus I plus g. Now we want to incorporate expectations in the IS curve. Now there are two steps to do this. The first step is that we'll simplify it, where we will write A to be a sum of consumption and investment, where A represents aggregate private spending or simply private spending. So the first step is just a simplification. So we've written our IS curve as y is equal to A plus G. So we have just grouped together consumption and investment under private spending because we know G is public spending. So we have IS y is equal to private spending plus public spending. Now, the next step, we will actually add expectations. Where now the IS curve is not just going to be a function of current variables, but also a function of the future expected values of the same variables with the same signs. What does this mean? We know in private spending, consumption and investment depend positively on Y. So now we're going to write private spending as a positive function of not just Y, but also YE. So you're writing it as a function of not just the current variables, but also a function of future expected values of the same variables with the same sign. So it is a positive function of Y, so we can write it as a positive function of Y as well. Then we know in private spending, consumption is a negative function of T. So then we're going to also write private spending as a negative function of TE, expected value of T, future expected value T. Then we know in private spending, investment is a negative function of R. So we will also write private spending as a negative function of RE. A note over here, okay, we're assuming that the risk premium X is constant. So that's why to save on notation, we've ignored it in this model. So this is essentially what we have done over here. Okay, we're writing now we're writing private spending not just as a function of the current variables y over here, but also of the future expected values of the same variables with the same sign. Similarly, negative function of t, so we'll write it as a negative function of te. Negative function of r, so write it as a negative function of re. So then we can write a IS curve equation as simply y is equal to a plus G, where A represents our private spending, G is our public spending, where our private spending is now not just a function of current variables, but also a function of future expected values of the same variables with the same sign.